Welcome to True Crime Bites, Death Row and Executions, where we honor lives lost and revisit the final chapters of those who crossed the line. The last meals and final words of executed prisoners reveal a haunting mix of regret, defiance, and raw humanity in their darkest moments. Some seek comfort, others make a final statement. Each story a chilling glimpse into the final chapter of a life on the edge. Dive in with me to uncover these unforgettable moments, and don't forget to subscribe. There's so much more to uncover in these unforgettable final moments. On June 6, 2024, Matthew Lee Johnson took his final walk. Not into a courtroom, not into a cell, but into Texas's death chamber. He was 54 years old, convicted of setting 76-year-old Nancy Harris on fire during a robbery in Garland, Texas, back in 2012. The crime shocked the state, but on this night, it wasn't about what he did. It was about how it ended. As tradition goes, death row inmates in Texas aren't granted elaborate last meal requests anymore. Not since one inmate abused the privilege in 2011. Instead, Johnson was offered a standard prison meal: baked chicken, mashed potatoes, pinto beans, carrots, cornbread, and fruit punch. But Johnson didn't touch a bite of it. Whether it was nerves, defiance, or just a final act of indifference, he declined the food entirely. No requests, no substitutions, no explanation, just silence. But his silence didn't last. Strapped to the gurney, IV lines in his arms, he turned his head toward the witnesses. Among them, Nancy Harris's family. And he spoke. "As I look at each one of you, I can see her on that day. I please ask for your forgiveness. I never meant to hurt her." Within 9 minutes, Matthew Lee Johnson was pronounced dead at 6:56 p.m. Whether those words brought peace to Nancy Harris's family is something we'll never fully know, but they came far too late to undo what had already been done. On May 20th, 2025, shortly after midnight at Indiana State Prison in Michigan City, 45-year-old Benjamin Ritchie faced the end of his life. Convicted in 2002 for the shooting death of Beech Grove police officer William Toney, the execution finally arrived after more than 20 years behind bars. In his final hours, Ritchie was granted a tradition not seen in a while: a special last meal. He requested the tour of Italy from Olive Garden, a hearty spread of fettuccine alfredo, lasagna, chicken parmesan, all the calorie-packed comfort one could imagine, a symbolic indulgence before the final chapter. Yet even as the food arrived, what mattered wasn't what he ate, it was what he left behind. Strapped to the gurney, IV lines in place, the room hushed. He spoke his final words directed toward those he loved. "I love my family, my friends, and all the support I've gotten. I hope they all find peace." No mention of the victim, no public apology, no confession, just a brief, direct message to those who stood by him. Witnesses say the lethal injection began shortly after midnight, and at 12:46 a.m., Benjamin Ritchie was pronounced dead. His body reacted, twitching briefly, before everything fell silent. In the end, the meal was finished, the words were spoken, and the needle did its work. What lingered wasn't peace, but a quiet divide. For Officer Toney's family, Ritchie's final words may have felt hollow. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the life taken, just a private goodbye meant for those who stood behind him. A violent story closed not with justice or redemption, but with lasagna, fading breath, and a few soft-spoken lines that couldn't undo the past. Ritchie's words were for his loved ones, not for the family of Officer William Toney, whose life was taken in the line of duty. There was no apology, no responsibility, just a personal farewell. In moments like this, it's hard not to wonder if justice was heard loud enough through the silence. On May 22, 2025, at 10:47 a.m., 75-year-old Oscar Franklin Smith entered the execution chamber at Tennessee's Riverbend Maximum Security Institution, bringing to an end a decades-long saga of horror and legal turmoil. Before the injection, he was granted one final indulgence: hot dogs, tater tots, apple pie with vanilla ice cream. A simple, nostalgic meal, unremarkable, but perhaps deeply personal. The menu belied the gravity of his crimes: the brutal 1989 murders of his estranged wife, Judy Robert Smith, and her two sons, Chad and Jason. For more than 35 years, Smith maintained his innocence, battling to expose new evidence, and even pausing his execution due to procedural oversights. Strapped to the gurney, with witnesses and officials observing, Smith took a final, defiant stand in words. "Somebody needs to tell the governor the justice system doesn't work," he declared, naming Governor Bill Lee as executions resumed under new lethal injection rules. He kept going. "It's a damn fool if he doesn't realize we've got innocent men at Riverbend waiting to die. I didn't kill her. I didn't kill her." No apology, no remorse. Just a final fiery critique of a system he believed had failed him, and potentially others. As the pentobarbital coursed through his veins, his voice faded. His chest rose and sagged once. Then a final stillness. Even in the final minutes, Smith insisted he was innocent. Whether it was defiance or desperation, his words weren't for forgiveness. They were for a system he claimed had failed him. But for the victims' families, his last stand may have only deepened old wounds. On June 10, 2025, just after 6 p.m., Anthony Wainwright, 54, was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison for the 1994 abduction, sexual assault, and murder of 23-year-old Carmen Gayhart. In his final hours, Wainwright declined a special last meal, choosing prison food over any indulgence. According to his spiritual advisor, he said a fancy meal would distract him from his family and the people that he loved. Then right before death, he spoke. His words weren't an apology, but a message to those he left behind. "To the family of Carmen Gayhart, I hope my death brings you peace and healing. Please continue the fight, because I can promise you they are not going to let up." He also addressed his wife, Samantha. "My beautiful wife, Samantha, you are the love of my life. The years we have spent together have been beyond wonderful. Love is stronger than death, and I know our love will last for eternity." There was no apology to Carmen, only an expression of hope that his death would help her family heal, and a romantic declaration to the woman he claimed to love. Wainwright offered words to Carmen Gayhart's family, but no apology. His focus remained on the people he loved, and not the young woman whose life he brutally ended. It was a goodbye wrapped in sentiment, but not in accountability. On June 10, 2025, at 6:26 p.m., Gregory Hunt, aged 65, was executed by nitrogen gas at a South Alabama prison. His crime? The brutal 1988 murder of Karen Lane, a 32-year-old woman he had been dating for about a month. She was found sexually assaulted and beaten to death in her Cordova apartment. Hunt declined to have a dinner meal. On the day of his execution, he had a lunch tray that included bologna, black-eyed peas, carrots, and fruit punch, prison officials said. Before the gas was administered, Hunt gave a thumbs up and a peace sign with his fingers, signaling to witnesses. He did not speak any final words. The execution was witnessed by several of Karen Lane's relatives, who later stated that the night was not about Hunt's life, but rather the horrific death of Karen Sanders Lane, whose life was so savagely taken from her. They emphasized that this night represented justice and the end of a nightmare that had coursed through their family for 37 years. The gas began flowing shortly after 5:55 p.m. At 5:57 p.m., Hunt briefly shook, gasped, and raised his head off the gurney. He let out a moan at about 5:59 p.m., raised his feet, and took a series of 4 or more gasping breaths with long pauses in between. He made no visible movements after 6:05 p.m. No last words, just a peace sign and a moan before the gas took hold. Karen Lane's family waited 37 years for this moment, not to celebrate, but to finally close a chapter that should have never been written. For them, it wasn't about vengeance. It was about acknowledgement, that what was taken from them mattered, that Karen's life meant something. Justice didn't bring her back, but at last it brought an ending to a story they never asked to be part of. On June 12, 2025 at 10:11 a.m., John Fitzgerald Hanson was executed by lethal injection, bringing to a close a tragic chapter that began over 2 decades earlier. Hanson was convicted of the brutal murder of 77-year-old Mary Agnes Bowles, whom he and an accomplice carjacked and kidnapped from a mall parking lot on August 3, 1999. During the crime, they also took the life of a witness, Gerald Thurman, adding to the pain and loss left in their wake. In the final hours before his execution, Hanson did not request a special last meal, choosing instead to accept the standard prison fare offered to other inmates. His final meal consisted of chicken pot pie, 2 rolls, 2 fruit cups, and carrots. A simple, unremarkable meal that reflected the routine and stark reality of death row. Strapped to the execution gurney, moments before the lethal injection, Hanson spoke his last words in a low, mumbled tone. His message was brief but carried the weight of remorse. Just forgive me, or just forgiveness, followed by a final wish of peace to everyone. Those words, humble and quiet, echoed in the sterile chamber, a solemn reminder of the human story behind the crime and the irreversible consequences that followed. A soft-spoken peace to everyone doesn't erase what was done to Mary Bowles and Gerald Thurman. Hanson's remorse may have been real, but for the families left behind, it's too little, too late. On June 13, 2025 at 6:34 p.m., Stephen Stanko was executed by lethal injection at Broad River Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina. He had been convicted of 2 separate murders committed in 2005, fatally shooting his 74-year-old friend Henry Turner and murdering his girlfriend Laura Ling, while also assaulting her teenage daughter, who survived the attack. For his final meal, Stanko requested a seafood feast: fried fish, fried shrimp, crab cakes, a baked potato, carrots, fried okra, cherry pie, banana pudding, and sweet tea. He ate this meal the day before his execution. It took several minutes for Stanko's attorney to read out his extensive final words. It goes as follows. What I hope and pray that is known and understood about me and every death row inmate and inmate in the world is that we are not the sum of one moment in time, wrote Stanko, who served on death row for 20 years. We execute people in this country for moments in their life. I have lived approximately 20,973 days, but I am judged solely for one. He said that as a youth, he was an honors student, an athlete, the president of the Spanish club, and was on the math team and in an engineering club. As a young adult, he said he volunteered at an orphanage, coached youth baseball, and saved a drowning child in Augusta. And on death row, he said he tutored inmates and developed a relationship with God. I do not say this to brag. I say it because I was not what people see me as now. In this moment, he wrote, he added that he hopes his surviving victim and the victim's families forgive him. The execution may help them. Forgiveness will heal them, he said. Stanko gave a long list of achievements, trying to paint a picture of a life beyond the murders. But in the end, he was not executed for the days he was good. He was executed for the days he chose evil. And those choices can't be rewritten, no matter how long the final letter is. These final meals and last words give us a glimpse into the final moments of people who committed some of the most violent and unforgivable acts imaginable. While their humanity may show through in their last words or final gestures, it doesn't erase the pain they caused or the lives they destroyed. Behind every execution is a victim, a mother, a father, a child, whose story didn't get a final meal or last word. As we revisit these final chapters, we don't forget the real tragedy, the innocent lives lost, the families shattered, and the wounds that never fully heal. These stories aren't meant to glorify the condemned, but to confront the weight of their actions, the justice that followed, and the strange rituals that marked the end. Thank you for watching. If this video kept you thinking, hit like, subscribe, and share. There's more to uncover, more cases, more chilling moments, and more of the truth that lies in the final breath. Because while their time has ended, the impact of their crimes lives on, and every ending has a story worth telling. As always, stay curious and stay safe.